Hello and welcome to another video. Now, normally I don't react to FUD or crash reports or that kind of stuff, but this week an accident happened which blew up all over the internet, and I've been getting some questions about it, some questions about my opinion on those things, so yeah, let's talk about it in this video. Now first, let's get the obvious out of the way. Regardless of whether it was a Tesla or another car, it's a very horrible accident, and it's very sad to see that two people lost their lives. And I feel sympathy with their families, and I hope they are being helped okay and they are coping well. But on the other hand, a lot of fingers are being pointed at Tesla as being a driverless car, and there was nobody in the seat. So how can that be? Now, I can only speak from a European perspective, of course, which is a lot more strict than what we have in the US, but the same regulations or the same safety measures are still in place in the US. They're just applied a little bit more loosely, but they are still there. Now, the first thing we need to know is, how can a car drive on autopilot with nobody in the driver's seat? I mean, if you drive on autopilot, you don't pay attention for 15 seconds, right? You get the whole steering wheel message. After that, you get another 15 seconds of warnings, and after that, the car just stops, puts on the 4 blinkers, and then it just stops in the middle of the road at the moment. So you can drive for about 1 minute on autopilot without doing anything, and then the car just stops by itself. Another thing we have to keep in mind is that when you're driving on local roads, you can only activate autopilot when there are lane markings available. So without lane markings, it's not really possible to activate the autopilot. Now, Elon Musk also reacted to this news, saying that the car did not have the FSD option, so it was definitely not an FSD beta user, and autopilot was not enabled at that point. Now, what does that mean? Autopilot not being enabled, it's kind of a gray zone that we have with Tesla, because on the one hand, you can make a mistake by thinking autopilot is enabled. However, you just enabled cruise control. Now, you do hear the difference between a regular cruise control and activating autopilot, but for some it is confusing and the sound is just not enough. That's why we have within your view, you have a clear blue circle with the steering wheel, the gear selector, the PR and D, the D goes also blue, and then you see the blue lines on the dash, or the single blue line if you have navigate on autopilot. So for me it is pretty clear when you are on autopilot, when you are not, but some people have reported saying, okay, I thought I was on autopilot, but I was on cruise control. Now, being on cruise control means that the auto steer functionality is not working. That also means that you are on cruise control for maybe like 5 to 10 seconds before you definitely realize that you are not on autopilot, because the car starts to drift because of the slope of the road, for example, or because there's a turn in the road, and you'll definitely know that it is not on autopilot at that point. What it does detect is the fact that the seatbelt is buckled, yes or no. So that brings us to the question, how can a car drive without somebody in the driver's seat? No system is perfect, and Tesla has various checks in place, but of course these checks can be fooled, just like any other system can be fooled. So some people already do that, and I can get really frustrated and mad that people actually put like weights or oranges on the steering wheel to simulate the weight of the hand being on there and giving a little bit of that torque on the steering wheel that is that little bit of resistance that is required by law to detect that the driver is holding the steering wheel and thus ignoring the nag by just attaching a weight to it. I think it's really dangerous to do that because you have a bigger chance of being distracted, and still we all know that Autopilot is not a foolproof system. It is a good system, but there are so many cases where it still cannot handle the situation, especially on our European roads, especially with the non-FSD beta version. So the driver really needs to pay attention to the road, and that is also what the law mandates. So putting a weight on your steering wheel just to not have the nag is basically illegal. Right? So that's one point. The second point is that the seatbelt needs to be buckled. So how can the seatbelt be buckled while I'm not in the driver's seat? Well, that's just easy. You just clip it in behind you when you sit in the driver's seat. You put it in autopilot and you switch to the passenger seat. So that's kind of tricky to do, but it is doable. But once again, it's not only completely illegal to drive that way, but also it is extremely dangerous because you're not wearing your seatbelt. Your seatbelt is basically behind you. So if you are having an accident at that point, that would be a very bad situation. Now that brings me to kind of the conclusion that in order for those two people to be in the back seat while the car is driving, there are like two possibilities. One, which is very unlikely, and that is that the driver was not wearing a seatbelt, just in general. And because of the crash, in some way or form, the driver was thrown into the back seat. In that case, there was still somebody driving the car, but because of the accident and because of him being tossed around in the car, he ended up in the back seat. As I said, I think that is highly unlikely. In the second scenario, or the second possibility, is that they actually voluntarily try to trick the system to show off to their friends or whatever. I don't know what reason they had or what their mindset was at that point. But they would have to have buckled that seatbelt. They would have to have put some weight on there, because within that 10 seconds window that I actually mentioned before, it is impossible to just climb in the back seat in that short amount of time before you actually really know that, okay, this is going to go wrong, right? I do not expect anyone to just climb in the back seat expecting things to go wrong, because after all, it's still a $100,000 car or a 100,000 euro car that you're driving. So that's a lot of money, and I think for most people they will not want to waste that money. Now, what I also need to mention is the news coverage itself, because a buddy of mine, Sam Dominic, he actually reached out to CNBC, to the Wall Street Journal, to talk about this accident and to talk about how it's very unlikely that this is Tesla's fault. And CNBC used somebody else in the news apparently, but the Wall Street Journal was first very interested to talk to him. But once they learned that he was a pro-Tesla guy, not really a hardcore fanboy, but he is a Tesla advocate nonetheless, he was just ignored at that point, and they just declined the offer to come on the news for that. So that is also really sad to see that news just wants to go for the sensation and not really for the truth. And basically it's why I stopped following the news broadcasts altogether, because a lot of news is just, it's not fake news, but it's just for the clicks, and they twist it a little bit to make it more interesting, even though it's not the truth. And I find that really sad, and that's why I just stopped following it. And now people are starting to make a fuss about how easy it is for them to misguided Tesla. You just put a weight on the wheel, you buckle the seat belt, and you just do the right sequences. But in fact, it's quite hard, and no system is foolproof, right? Every system has some flaws, and that's just basically a law, right? You can't make anything really foolproof slash bulletproof in terms of systems and validations. And on the other hand, it's a lot easier to trick an ICE car because you can just put a brick on the gas pedal and it starts driving, right? Nothing more that you need to do. The seatbelt doesn't even need to be buckled at that point. So it's silly, but again, it's Tesla, so it is news, it gives clicks, and that is the reason why it is getting so much traction. I'm not a pure Tesla fanboy that doesn't like hearing that Tesla is not perfect or whatever, right? I've said many times things that are not good about Tesla as well, and I think it should be said, and Tesla should improve on a lot of things, and Autopilot needs to become better, and FSD needs to become a lot better to be safer. But right now, at this point, it is already a lot safer than driving manually, especially if you stick to the regulations, right? So the rules say you need to be in the driver's seat, you need to be paying attention, you need to be able to take over at any time. As long as you stick to those rules, right, then Autopilot is really safe and it helps you drive more relaxed. You can be more attentive to the surroundings, and yeah, it's overall a joy to drive. I use it every single day, and it's a lot safer than driving manually, especially because you can be a little bit distracted from time to time, and then there are these systems like Autopilot that save the day and save your life. So let's all be very much aware of the fact that this is just a level 2 car. It's a driver assist feature. It's not a fully autonomous vehicle, and you as a driver are still fully responsible for any and all actions that the car is taking, right? It is assisting you, it is not yet driving you. And I believe it will be quite some time before we reach that level where you don't have to care about driving anymore and the car will do it all for you. But in the meantime, we are in this situation, so let's stick to the rules, pay attention, and make sure that we get a lot of safe kilometers and safe miles in our Teslas. So hopefully you found this interesting, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and make sure you click that little bell icon so you don't miss out on any new videos. And also, while you're at it, why not join the channel by clicking on that blue join button below here, where you can get some exclusive member perks, and in return you are sponsoring the channel and helping me achieve my dream of getting my own YouTube studio, which I'm building right now. And if you want to know more about it, consider becoming a Ludicrous or Plet member, and you'll get to know all the nitty-gritty details about the studio build while I'm building it. But for now, thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one. Bye bye.